Hello, and welcome to the Gaia update for the nodal shift of the North Node into Gemini, South Node into Sagittarius that happens on May 6th, 2020. I'm Adrienne Elise. So the nodes of the moon stay in their signs for about a year and a half. And so for this last year and a half, we have had the North Node in Cancer, South Node in Capricorn. So these issues have to do with nurturing, mothering, feeling home and safe in the North Node energy, and the South Node energy in Capricorn around authority, claiming our power, and structures of this world. So the nodes have to do with the direction that humanity is taking. The nodes are actually a point in space that move backwards through the zodiac. So like the North Node was in Cancer, now it's moving into Gemini, so it'll go backwards through the signs, clockwise, whereas our other planets looking at the zodiac will go counterclockwise. So the nodes represent this point in space where the orbit of the moon around the earth and the earth around the sun intersect. And that is what's called the North Node and the South Node. So when the sun and the moon line up with these nodal points, that's when we get the eclipses. So eclipses bring an energy of direction, a lining up of destiny, timelines. And so you can see how the nodes and the placement of the nodes represents the direction that humanity is going. So the nodes in our chart, our birth chart, speak to how we want to move forward in this incarnation and what might be holding us back from the past. How do we get into alignment with our destiny? Collectively, the nodes speak to the direction of where we're heading and how we might want to get there. So for this last year and a half with the North Node in Cancer, it's been like, okay, humanity, can you receive nurturing? Can you come back into connection? Can you come back into feeling like you can be at home here on the planet? And then the South Node is this energy of like what's holding you back from the past, kind of karmic energies. And that has to do with us examining how we've given our power away. Now the nodes, since the nodes, they move kind of a little bit forward, back. So that's where you'll find the true node and then a mean node. And the mean node is like taking the average of this forward back motion. But because the nodes pretty much, even though they go forward and back, kind of wobble in a way, they pretty much keep moving. A lot of times we don't feel the effect of the nodes of the moon until a little after. It's almost a little delayed effect. So we're going to still be working through these Cancer Capricorn issues, but at the same time, this nodal shift represents a huge change for humanity. A huge new direction forward, a new message around how we're going to get to where we're trying to go. So let's talk this through. So the North Node in Gemini, South Node in Sagittarius. And this happens, like I said, on May 6th. And the nodes will stay in these signs until January 18th, 2022. So this is the journey ahead. And very important messages around this next year or two that we're in. So this is this energy of where the sun's path and the moon's path intersect. And the sun is who we think we are. It's like our place in the world, our identity in this lifetime. The sun in our chart represents kind of who we want to be, how we want to shine our light and express ourselves. So then the moon is our emotions and our representation to our emotional sensitive side, our water. And so this is like very, very personal, the nodes. And when you have the nodes, say in your chart where the nodes return, the nodal return, very powerful energy in your life around your destiny, your path, and how to get on it. The North Node, as it affects our chart, is telling us, hey, why aren't you going in the direction you want to go? So this nodal shift collectively for us is saying that we've got to find a new way forward, humanity. And in Gemini, the North Node speaks to communication and the mind. Gemini and Sagittarius are mutable signs, whereas Cancer and Capricorn, they are cardinal signs. They're like an impulse for a new beginning. The mutable signs are about adjusting, and that kind of speaks to where we're at. The mutable signs happen at the change of seasons. And this is where we're at. We're at a change of seasons, a big change of ages on the planet, and it's very disorienting. And that's kind of the energy of the mutable energies, right? Now, this nodal shift is so powerful. The reason why we're feeling it so strongly, this shift of the North Node into Gemini, is because Venus is in Gemini, about ready to take a retrograde, and meaning that Venus will stay 4 months in the sign of Gemini. And so let's kind of talk this through. Now, right at the beginning of this nodal shift, just before this happens, Mercury and the Sun come together in Taurus and a full moon in Scorpio on the day of this nodal shift. So this is telling us a little bit more about what the North Node in Gemini, South Node in Sagittarius is about. Scorpio, the full moon in Scorpio across from the Sun and Mercury in Taurus, is speaking to illuminating the shadows so that we can claim back our self-worth. So immediately the message around this North Node in Gemini has to do with information, truth, new understanding, new perspectives, because Gemini is a mutable air sign, right? So it's about adjusting the mind, adjusting the thinking. And so how does our thinking need to be adjusted? We need to evaluate where we've been hiding from our own shadow, hiding from the shadow on the planet, just pretending it's not there, choosing to be asleep to the shadows and the darkness. And Scorpio wants to bring it all to light and bring it all to truth. Now, the Sun and Mercury in Taurus is speaking to, Taurus represents what we need to survive, our feeling of comfort, ruled by Venus, right? And so it's this feeling of, can we have what we need? Now, with Uranus and Taurus, this is making it all really wild, because it's like the Sun and Mercury are personal planets trying to get a sense of what's going on here, but their conjunction comes on the heels of each of them having a conjunction with Uranus in Taurus. So Taurus is like how we're like looking for, it's fixed earth, and it's like looking for stability in this world. It's looking for, okay, I have what I need. I'm stable. I'm stabilizing, right? But Uranus is anything but stable. It's like the king of instability and kind of bringing an energetic disruption. The energetic disruption isn't just to create chaos. It's to disrupt patterns that are no longer serving us, right? And so the Mercury-Sun conjunction, just on the heels of each of these planets in conjunction with Uranus, is about our mind and our identity coming together and examining our value system, and our self-worth and our worthiness for the new energies and the new age. So our ability to receive the new age and this new stability in higher vibrational frequencies has everything to do with facing the shadow. And so that's the message of this nodal shift, as just like that's the kind of flash of light picture that starts it all off. And then at the end of May 2020, Mercury comes into a conjunction with the North Node. So Mercury moves into Gemini in May. It's moving fast now because it's like in between retrogrades, so it's cruising right along. It's just moving into Gemini, powering through. And then on the 28th of May, Mercury will come into a conjunction with the North Node. So this is going to be a lot of like insight into what the nodal shift is about. And that's really interesting because that's like the day after we come off of the influence of a month-long Venus in Gemini in square to Neptune. So the Venus retrograde that allows it to stay in Gemini for 4 whole months is marked very dramatically by an exact square with Neptune. So at the beginning of this whole story, that's also happening. At the same time as that, full moon in Scorpio, Mercury-Sun conjunction, Venus is an exact square to Neptune And then Venus comes back into an exact square with Neptune from the 20th to the 22nd of May. And so this is telling us a lot about the North Node in Gemini and preparing and supporting us for this shift. And so, but the thing is that Venus in square to Neptune is very confused about what we, it's like this feeling of, I don't know what I want. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what's true. I don't know what's real. It's a feeling of maybe like this big world situation we're in right now, having this massive causing of shift in a deep value system in our world. Like, okay, back to reality or a new normal. What is it? Who am I? What do I want? What am I doing? Right? It's like this great pause we've been in that's forcing us to reevaluate what we really want. And it might not be what we thought we wanted. This is a huge energy for these advanced souls, the light worker souls that are drawn to this work. This is inevitably a part of what happens on the journey. When your bigger self starts to land, your spiritual purpose comes in, your divine timeline. And then there's this energy of like, whoa, like now my life and everything I've built and the structures don't make sense. Now they can adjust though, right? I mean, this is the beauty of the mutable energy. It's like, and Gemini is a quick mind. And it's like, oh, okay, new perspective. Okay, over here, right? Now Gemini also can be kind of that butterfly visiting flower to flower, maybe not able to go deep into the truths. And yet we need this changeable, adjustable mind, right? Because a big part of how we got here is very fixed ideas. This has been like a disease that's been programmed into humanity to cling to fixed ideas, even though evidence might prove it otherwise, right? This is the energy of the dark side of the Piscean age, is religious fanaticism, and that, your God says it's okay to kill those other people because they don't believe in your God, right? And your God is the one God in the one way. And we know that's a total distortion, right? So this Gemini North Node is like, adjust your thinking, see a new perspective, like, come on, wake up, humanity, right? But with Venus heading into a retrograde, so uncertain about, Venus is just, Venus retrograde brings up so much uncertainty about what we want and what we need and what makes us feel good, and uncomfortable places. When we go to make big changes in our life, and this is the Venus retrograde energy, it's like, ooh, this relationship, this job, something is not right here, and I can't go on the way I've been going. I'm ignoring it, right? And in Gemini, it's like maybe ignoring those facts and truths. And they're coming to the surface now. And then that's that uncomfortable feeling of facing the delusions, and you're sick to your stomach, and there's no way around it, right? Like once you see the truth, you've got to make that adjustment in your life. But it takes going down that wrong road long enough. And that's this Venus retrograde. It's like, ooh, wrong road. Wait, turn around, right? So a very powerful energy. And so it's interesting that, for the whole month of May, we're feeling this really intense Venus square Neptune, first of all, before it turns retrograde, then Venus square Neptune after it turns retrograde. Total confusion about what's real, direction, like what is this life even about anyway, right? Because a lot of people have been given this space and time and pause because of this current world situation. And then they're like questioning, but they don't want to question, right? Like we want to just get back into just get me on Netflix or whatever, right? Like get me back into my rhythm of work, And it's like, oh gosh, this like uncomfortable feeling of having to face what parts of your life aren't actually serving your soul. And so it's intense energy. Now, Neptune has an energy, though, of this oneness principle. The higher octave of Pisces is spiritual revelation, connection to the one truth, spiritual truth. Venus is everyday love. So there's a beautiful opportunity for magic to happen. Gemini has a magical energy of like when you're open. See, when you know exactly what you're doing and where you're going and your plan, right? Then you take the magic out of life, right? Like, how can the new experiences and the new opportunities come in if you're so set in how it's going to be, right? And that's this Gemini energy is asking us to imagine something beyond what we can imagine, right? Venus is what we want, what we dream of. And Neptune is big spiritual dreams. And so the square is like tension, right? Like, and it's almost like maybe it has to do with this timeline alignment thing where it's like, humanity, are you going on the higher road or are you going to stay on the lower road, right? Because that lower road it's like always seeking outside gratification. When I have this, then I'll be happy. And our whole life, we've been programmed to seek the external conditions that will make us happy. Our whole life is built on, our whole society is built on conditions, conditional reality and conditional love, right? And so it's like, are you going to continue on that road where you're never, ever satisfied? Or are you going to open your mind to spiritual possibilities and the fact that it's not about that? Like, you can never actually be satisfied with that physical gratification, right? So powerful place that we're at. And that's where it's like, I know these soul groups that I speak to are feeling it, like this bigness of what's coming, this kind of inevitable feeling, but also like a dread because it's like your destiny's trying to land and you got to make that choice, but you already made the choice, right? So that's an important message. It's like, you already made the choice before you came, way before you even came to Earth evolution. You already made this choice. It's why you came. So can you get into the magic of it, into that possibility energy of like serendipity and just kind of like going with the flow and letting it happen instead of trying to force your life into a mold that doesn't actually fit you? Because we don't know who we are in our bigger self. We don't know what we want. And so it's uncomfortable, but absolutely essential and really important for us in this Venus retrograde to get reoriented in our value system. And the key to getting on that more ideal spiritual timeline. So interesting, after a whole month of influence of Venus square Neptune and confusion of May 2020, then Mercury comes into this conjunction the day after, literally, like the influence of that Venus square Neptune goes from April 27th to May 27th, and then May 28th, Mercury. I mean, it's just, you can't make this up, you know? This is why it's so cool to pay attention to the planets and what they're doing. They've got messages for us. You know, they're living beings that are trying to support us on the journey. And can we pay attention, you know? And that maybe is part of the energy of the Sagittarius South Node, because the South Node is that karma that's holding us back. Sagittarius is a seeker. It's trying to shoot off into the stars. It's you know, it's the centaur and the arrow and the direction, spiritual direction and the quest and the journey, right? But these advanced souls that I've been speaking to have some deep trauma around this, where when you were on your path and really directed, like that arrow shooting through the woods, through the wilderness, right? You got attacked for that. And you got beaten down and you got invalidated and you created karmic relationships where the whole point of these relationship circles you've been stuck in for lifetimes is just to invalidate your path and purpose, right? So when we talk about trying to direct our life towards the spiritual, there's grief there. And that's where we get back to this Taurus, Uranus and Taurus of like a radical shift in our self-worth back towards our spiritual path and our spiritual truth. And understanding that because you have such a spiritual path and a spiritual truth, there's been forces working through the people around you for lifetimes to invalidate that, right? But the Sagittarius South Node is bringing up a lot of stuff, like almost like you feel like you failed in your mission. You were so directed. You had all this energy going towards this goal, this path. You knew what you were doing, right? And then you were thwarted. And then it's this feeling of like, I failed. I don't deserve it. I you know, like, and here you are stuck in this dimensional reality, completely lost connection to your spiritual purpose, but you yearn for it. It's why you even exist, right? And yeah, it's like you feel like if somebody came and handed it to you on a silver platter right now, you'd be like, maybe next life, because I don't know if I'm quite good enough. That's like, this is a big part of the energy right now. Like, can you receive the goodness beyond what you can imagine? So we've been going like grappling around for crumbs, right? Like just trying to make this life work for us in the lower dimensional reality. In the higher dimensional reality, it's about holding you and supporting you as a spiritual being. And yet, do you deserve it, right? This is the key thing. And maybe that's a lot of what this Venus retrograde is about, because Venus is our self-worth. So retrograde Venus is always going to bring up deep insecurities and programming around whether or not we deserve. And what if Gemini is trying to bring in the Gemini magic, right? Of possibility and opening our mind to possibility and to it could be better than we can imagine. And that we can't, like, so much of what's been bothering these souls is trying to get back to that focused direction of this is what I'm here to do, this is what I'm doing, and your life will not support it because you're still in the lower paradigm, And so the Gemini energy is serving us to mix it up, like mix it up and open our mind and let some possibilities come in instead of trying to force it with our little brain, with our will that's lower. Like it's like we don't feel like we deserve our higher path, but we're like determined to try to feel like we're doing what we're here to do. So it's like this is the Venus retrograde. It's got to have a massive adjustment, in our self-worth, who we are, what we're doing, what makes us feel good, what we need. And so very powerful energy there. And so the culmination of this incredible May of 2020 is that Mercury conjunct the North Node and maybe clarity coming through, right? Like, because it's like, okay, as long as Venus is in square Neptune, we can have a lot of exploring of these ideas of self-worth and what we really want and spiritual revelation and our greater, wider truth and all that, but it's not really going to crystallize and make sense. And so I think that's a very powerful moment in time where we have that Mercury conjunct the North Node and the Sun will have moved into Gemini. So now everybody's in Gemini and we're like, okay, what's going on here? Maybe trying to get a little bit of clarity coming off of that Venus square Neptune. Now, the third and final Venus square Neptune happens in July. So know that confusion and redirection and rearranging in our mind and our value system and what we want, that's still going to go on through the end of July. So it's like, but May is the big kind of like pushing us into that energy. Like, you got to make some big changes, right? So now June is powerful too, because this is going to be the first eclipse season where the nodes have shifted. Okay. So there's a lunar eclipse on the 5th of June. And that's in Sagittarius, but it's far off of the node. So it's not a total eclipse, but it's very significant because it's the first eclipse with a nodal shift. And so it's that Sagittarius energy is going to come into play, because that lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, right at the middle of Sagittarius, is where that happens. And the nodes are still going to be at the end of the signs, right? So it's just barely an eclipse, but it's a powerful energy of like, okay, this is what the energy we're moving into. And speaking to that South Node energy of what's holding us back, which is these failed dreams, And I know we've all had this situation where something you really thought and you really wanted and you worked so hard for it and then it didn't work out. And then you're kind of stuck for a while, right? Immobilized in that trauma and grief. And maybe that's where humanity's at right now. We've had this huge trigger of trauma energy, collective global trauma. Turns out it's manipulative. This is Gemini is a mastermind that can get you, Houdini can get you out of situations, mastermind thinking. And then it's also manipulation, right? And it's got those two sides, the twins. Being able to see different points of view, which means you can end up in total confusion. But Sagittarius is about bringing those different points of view into a focus, right? And so we're kind of looking at this. It's powerful because we'll have the Venus retrograde still going on, and then that lunar eclipse in Sagittarius bringing forward our self-worth issues about our failed missions, failed spiritual purpose in the past. Big, powerful message that comes through in these past life readings that I give is that where you think you failed, you actually succeeded, because what you were doing was your perspective was off. You thought you were supposed to complete this particular physical experience, and actually you were just planting a seed and inspiring souls, other souls to come together in the future. So that's a powerful energy of that lunar eclipse. And like I said, Venus will still be retrograde at that point. Then on the 20th of June, the sun and the North Node come together at 29 degrees Gemini. It's like, okay, now we're really in the nodal shift. We're really in Gemini energy. And that also brings us to a solar eclipse on the 21st at 0 degrees Cancer. So it's interesting, right? Because it's like, okay, we've made a nodal shift, but we have one more eclipse in Cancer, and Cancer Capricorn energy, but 0 degrees, right? So it's like canceling out, kind of trying to complete that energy of the last year and a half. And so that's at 0 degrees Cancer, 21 minutes. And that is happening on the 21st, on the solstice, solar eclipse, 0 degrees Cancer. Huge shift for humanity out of this chapter of can you receive the nurturing? And now it's like, can you take the nurturing and allow it to make these radical adjustments in your thinking, your self-worth, and your direction, and choosing that ideal timeline. That's what that feels like, is this the eclipse and the solstice together on the 21st of June is about choosing that ideal timeline, making a choice. And it's interesting because we've been talking about that feeling of being in the birth canal and these layered timelines kind of coming together, that we're going through a portal. So all these timelines have to come together. And that's why our world has been so wonky and weird and not making sense. Layered time. And then maybe that solar eclipse is kind of like, okay, go beyond the timeline you want, right? You had your opportunity to see options. I don't know. We'll see what's up with that. But, May, so powerful with Venus in square to Neptune, and big, powerful shifts of the nodes and Venus retrograde. And then June, so intensely powerful with the eclipses and anchoring us into these new energies. And then on the 25th of June, Venus turns direct. So that's where we're going to be like, oh, okay. Then Venus direct, it's like, now we're going to think about moving forward in these new directions, except for that then we have a Mercury retrograde and in Cancer. So it's like we're completing and healing and understanding that Cancer energy. And then we're going to also have a Mars retrograde later in the year in its home sign of Aries. So it's just, we're in it. The 2020, it's like we're just in it. Right? Like it's not, there's shifts and stuff and we're making these big changes, but we're really just kind of like stuck in this energy until the end of the year. So now after Venus turns retrograde, it's going to continue to be in Gemini until the 7th. It comes out of shadow at the end of July. That's right when it comes into, so the 27th, 28th of July is when Venus makes its third and final square to Neptune. So that's when so the third and final hit, when planets make a retrograde and they go over 3 times, the third and final is like, oh, okay, this is what this has been about, right? So the end of July is going to take us all the way back to April, where Venus went into Gemini. And then what's happening now in May. And so that's powerful energy. And then right after that, Venus comes. So it's direct now. It makes its third and final square with Neptune. We're going to go back into the confusion. It's kind of like, did you get the message? Are you going to make those changes in your life that you said you would? This is where it gets confusing in life right now. This whole energy, it's like with Venus retrograde, it's like, okay, so facing where what you thought was good for you might be not good for you. And then are you going to go ahead and take care of yourself and do what's good for you? And maybe this is part of this message of like receiving the nurturing, coming back into nurturing of the Cancer North Node requires making the changes in our life, showing the universe we're willing to nurture ourselves and take care of ourselves. So a lot of shifts. If you're still holding on to that toxic narcissist relationship, It's going to be on the table, right? Venus retrograde always brings up past relationship stuff. Know these people are going to come kind of clinging back into your life. And it's an opportunity to be like, that's not what love looks like. Thank you very much. And that's kind of a common thing with Venus retrograde. Gemini, it's about coming out of delusions, especially with that square Neptune, seeing the clarity of things, coming out of the manipulation energies and becoming the mastermind, right? So these souls that I speak to are often pulled into these relationships, manipulative, toxic relationships, because they want your energy, and they want your power. And you're naive. You're like, oh, but they're hurting, a little wounded puppy at the window, and I want to take care of them, right? And we fall into these codependent, toxic relationships. And it's like, coming out of that manipulation energy and being like, no, I am not going to feed the lower energies. I don't care how wounded you are. Go find another victim to feed off of, because they don't want to heal. They just want to use your energy, right? And you're not here for that. You're much too valuable for that, to feed a black hole, right? So a huge energy with this Venus retrograde. And then in August, Venus, after it comes out of shadow, it has its third and final square with Neptune, and then right into its conjunction with the North Node. That's when we get the message of the Venus retrograde, not till August. Wow. So we're in quite a journey. And the summer is like, whoa, huge energy of delusions, facing truth, confusion, coming to clarity, and then when Venus conjuncts that North Node, it's like, okay, now we're officially North Node in Gemini. Now we have a new direction in our life. Now we know how to nurture ourselves, what we need to do to take care of ourselves in order to support that higher ideal to land in our life and on the planet through us as living examples of this highest ideal. And that's a lot of what that Venus square Neptune is about, bridging our personal values in our personal life with a bigger spiritual oneness and values of that spiritual revelation energy coming back in. It makes so much sense with the Sagittarius South Node, like, oh yeah, so I thought I failed in my mission, but that doesn't mean I don't get to do it anymore, and I didn't actually fail. And it's like, get back on your horse, Sagittarius, get back on your horse. You're not done, you're just getting started, and here's the fun part, right? But we got to go through this uncomfortable rearranging to get there. Now Venus, okay, so then in September, very powerful time, because Mercury will come into a square with the nodes and the Sun and Venus all together. In October, Venus does it. So in September, on September 3rd, Mercury squares the nodes. And so this is like that Mercury-Sun energy conjunction, and then in both of them coming into square with the nodes, it's like that reorientation of what this means. The North Node in Gemini, South Node in Sagittarius. The Sun does that on September 17th. So huge energy of reorienting our life, our identity, our mind, our perspective towards this new direction. That's what September is about, which is good. I mean, September has that energy of shift, change, just change of seasons, change of life. And so that's kind of a powerful energy. And it speaks back to the very beginning of this nodal shift, that Mercury Sun conjunction and the Venus retrograde will be completely completed, right? So that's powerful. Now, when we get into, and then Venus squares the nodes in October. So Venus will cruise right along and get into Scorpio and Sagittarius. Venus will be in Virgo. Venus and Virgo squaring up with the nodes in October. So that'll be kind of like, again, reorienting Virgo, the Virgin, rebirth into our new path, into our new direction, perhaps. Then in December, we've got the next set of these eclipses with the nodes in the new placement. So on December 10th, the Sun squares Neptune. So it's going to bring back all those Venus issues, kind of like, can we complete this so we can move into 2021, right? So the Sun squares Neptune December 10th. Then then this conjuncts the South Node on the 11th. So when the sun's in Sag, it's kind of like, okay, are we getting this? Are we ready to move into our new direction? And very powerful energy of the December 14th total solar eclipse. That's a new moon in Sagittarius, and it happens at 9:17 a.m. in my time zone. And so it's like that December 14th total solar eclipse, new moon energy at 23 degrees Sagittarius. That's like, can we focus this energy? Get back on our spiritual purpose, get back on the horse, and that's when your new path on your ideal timeline and, the next chapter will finally maybe come into some focus, right? So that's a powerful energy. And, part of the deal with the South Node in Sagittarius is that Gemini's like exploring all these ideas and maybe can't really come to a truth and is comfortable not knowing for sure and exploring. And they might be kind of chameleon, like they'll just kind of go along with the crowd they're in. But they're open to new ideas, right? Sagittarius is a little bit more like trying to bring those ideas into a fixed form. So they can be a little know-it-all. They can be a kind of like, this is the way, right? That religious fanaticism type energy. And so that's part of the South Node in Sagittarius. Like we got to get out of that thinking and have the beautiful part of the focused mind, but that's still open to new ideas. Very needed in our society right now. And so that's kind of what's trying to work through with that Sagittarius new moon total solar eclipse on December 14th. It's like, humanity, we got to get out of the dogma, It's almost like it's connected to that Capricorn South Node, I feel like, because Capricorn South Node is like, where do we give our power away to religious authority? And we can only do that if you get stuck in dogma, right? And so it's like we got to unravel these old patterns. And then there's a lunar eclipse on December 30th, and that's at 8 degrees Cancer. And it's partial lunar eclipse, but very powerful. Oh, it's another Cancer one. So again, I was wrong about that. The solar eclipse happens at Cancer. So we're still working out those. That's interesting, right? We're still working out those Cancer Capricorn energies all the way through this year and sorting it through. And that lunar eclipse, December 30th, powerful end of the year time, because Saturn and Jupiter in December. Okay, so we have the total solar eclipse on the 14th, complete change of direction, like anchoring in a new timeline. Then, because remember, the eclipses are about this lining up and this timeline energy. Saturn and Jupiter come together. They retrograde and go direct, very close. They're really kind of moving together. And they come together in Capricorn at the end of Capricorn and together move over into Aquarius, so it's like, it's interesting that total solar eclipse on the 14th, new timeline in alignment with the Aquarian Age and the new energies. So Saturn and Jupiter come together, move into Aquarius in December. We've got a lunar eclipse on December 30th. The North Node will square up with Neptune at that time, or the South Node and the North Node, right? The nodes will square to Neptune in Pisces. That happens in January 2021. And so it's like this shift, this end of the year, like, yeah, we're in a weird place of adjusting and rearranging our whole reality and mental construct and direction and timeline and world. 2020, that's what it's about. Immediately when we get into 2021, it's like, okay, boom, Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius, and Saturn's established now. Saturn will not be going back into Capricorn, right? Or Jupiter. It's like, okay, establishing this new energy. We're going to explore it. We're going to grow. We're going to try to build in this new energy. And then the North Node, or the node squaring up with Neptune, it's kind of like, okay, can we move out of this Piscean age? What do we need to adjust? What do we need to change? What truths do we need to look at? Sorting through all of this stuff. And the other thing that's happening is that Mars comes out of its retrograde shadow, like on January 1st. So massive shifting, and just like kind of like, okay, you guys, it's like we're, the new platform of a new reality is heading in 2021. And are you going to step onto it? And that's what that eclipse season is about in December. So then we're fully into the nodes, but they're going to stay in this placement, move through Gemini and Sagittarius, like I said, into January 2022. So a whole nother year of this energy, and it's a very important part of us moving into the Aquarian age. So I look forward to continuing to connect with you with updates as we move through these energies in this potent year of 2020 and preparing for the ongoing journey of this massive transition we're making into a whole new paradigm and a new age. And you are here to lead the way, and we're going to do it together. So I look forward to seeing you soon on the next update and throughout this time together. Until then, I'm Adrienne Elise. Namaste.